All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to be looking at how the microscopic world inside you basically acts as the ultimate command center. Right now, every single second, actually, there is an entire universe of activity happening just under your skin, and it is completely governed by an incredibly intricate set of genetic rules. These rules literally dictate how you live, how you breathe, and how you function. Now, this next concept kind of flips everything we assume about life and biology totally on its head. Did you know that the death of your cells is actually strictly programmed? Crazy, right? We usually think of cells as just fighting tooth and nail to stay alive and multiply. But what if I told you that their very end is often written right into their code? Well, before we look at exactly how a cell intentionally self-destructs, we kind of need to look at how it operates on a daily basis. So, let's start with section 1, the master blueprint. We're going inside the command center. To put this whole thing into perspective, your body contains several billion cells. That's a staggering, almost incomprehensible number when you really think about it. Yet, instead of total chaos, there's this incredible order. These billions of cells are organized into over 200 major types, each with hundreds of super-specific vital functions. And the craziest part? Every single one of these cells contains hereditary information. Think of it as the base software running your body's hardware. This brings us to a major biological classification you've probably heard of: eukaryotes. Plant and animal cells, which obviously includes human cells, so that's us, are eukaryotes. The word itself actually comes from the Greek eu, meaning well or truly, and karyon, meaning kernel or nucleus. Practically speaking, this just means their genetic information is securely locked inside a proper double-membrane nucleus. It is basically a highly secure, microscopic bank vault for your DNA. On the flip side, we have prokaryotes. The absolute main thing that distinguishes them is the complete absence of this membrane-bound command center. That prefix pro just means before, which gives us a little hint at an older, much simpler evolutionary design, where the internal layout is just entirely different. When you look closely at a prokaryote, the difference is night and day. Without that defining nuclear envelope to house the genetic data, the genetic material is just kind of gathered in a specific region. It's completely exposed to the rest of the cell's cytoplasm rather than being safely tucked away in its own shielded compartment. So the really crucial takeaway here is that in eukaryotes, like us, the nucleus is the absolute largest organelle in the cell. It holds the entire cell's genetic information in the form of DNA. It's the boss. It regulates the exchange of materials and makes absolutely sure that exact, perfect copies of DNA are passed down safely from parent cells to daughter cells whenever a cell divides. Okay, moving on to section 2, packaging the genetic code. Let's see how all this DNA actually fits into these tiny spaces. I mean, fitting all of this genetic data into a microscopic cell requires a literally incredible packaging process. It all starts with these very long, thread-like DNA molecules. To keep them from getting hopelessly tangled up, they wrap around proteins to form these little structures called nucleosomes. Then, those nucleosomes weave and coil together into a much thicker chromatin fiber. Finally, right when the cell is ready to divide, this chromatin condenses incredibly tightly into chromosomes. Honestly, it's just like taking a massive tangled ball of yarn and perfectly, meticulously winding it onto a compact little spool. So right at the beginning of cell division, each chromosome takes on a very specific structure. You've got 2 genetically identical sister chromatids, and they're held together super tightly at this central pinch point called the centromere. Extending out from that center, you have the distinct P and Q arms, which are then capped off and protected at the very ends by telomeres. It's this precise, beautiful organization that completely ensures the survival and genetic diversity of their offspring. Which brings us to section 3, running the cell cycle. Let's look at the cell's actual timeline. This timeline essentially dictates the cell's entire working life, representing a series of really critical decisions. First, in the G1 phase, the cell is super busy. It undergoes extensive metabolic activity, synthesizing enzymes and just physically growing in size. But from there, it has a choice. It might enter the G0 phase, where the cell cycle halts completely. This pause could last for a few days, a couple of weeks, or literally for the entire lifetime of the organism. Or, on the flip side, if it gets the right signals, it will commit to the S phase, where it completely replicates its DNA and duplicates its chromatin material. As you might guess, running this whole complex cycle is a massively energy-intensive process. The cell is constantly drawing on cellular respiration to power, well, everything. It needs serious energy to synthesize large molecules like DNA and proteins, to physically drag chromosomes around during division, to fuel all that growth, and to actively transport ions and molecules from low to high concentration areas. Basically, absolutely nothing in the cell happens for free. There is always an energy cost. And now for section 4, programmed to die. Let's talk about the ultimate fate of a cell. So, remember what we mentioned at the start? It turns out that a cell's ultimate fate isn't always just an accident or the result of some injury. It is actively coded to sacrifice itself when instructed to do so by extracellular signals. It is just this beautifully orchestrated system of cellular checks and balances. This really highlights two vastly different paths a cell can take. First, you have apoptosis. This is a highly controlled, intentional deletion of structures, and it's actually incredibly beneficial. For example, apoptosis is exactly the process that removes the temporary tail of a developing human embryo, or perfectly sculpts the tissue between our developing fingers and toes so we don't have webbed hands. But on the other side of the ring, we have necrosis. This is the exact opposite. It's the uncontrolled, unplanned, accidental path of cell death, and it's usually caused by external damage or trauma. When you really sit and think about the incredible organization happening right now inside your body, all guided by this microscopic blueprint, it's mind-blowing. If your cells are constantly reading highly complex genetic code to live, to grow, and even intentionally self-destruct for your overall benefit, what other mysteries do you think still remain locked away within that DNA?